Cast Their Crowns Inc. A few things this morning. Hopefully you guys are having a lovely morning. Stepping up the bar. I'm going to address something. I'm not typically racially based or inclined. I find that to be a bit fruitless, and you're putting up barriers unnecessarily. You most certainly should identify race, and you should identify certain things that's being held up against a race for sure. But just to in general speak and have a message and make it seem as if your message is only for one particular race, I find that depending on what your message is, you may miss the mark, because how do you exactly know who's who, right? And you're limiting yourself. And why are you limiting yourself to just one particular portion of the world, when if your information is truly that valuable, there's going to be people everywhere, all over the planet Earth, that's going to be seeking that information, that's going to benefit from it. And if you're in the position to say, well, I'm going to exclude a person based off of what it is that I see, then those are the same tactics and the actions of the most hateful people on the planet Earth. So why would you really go that way? So with that being said, oftentimes there doesn't seem to be a standard, and I'm talking about in social media. There doesn't seem to be a standard amongst relationships. There doesn't seem to be a standard for what's quality in an actual relationship. And I'm not talking about preference, because preference is not a standard. Please understand. Preference is not a standard. You want to know why preference is not a standard? Because a preference typically is never done, and a preference is based on someone else. That's not a standard. See, your standard for someone else applies to you. So if you have a particular standard, you're going to abide by that standard. So someone you come across is going to have to match that standard. That's why standards are good. There is not an actual standard that's being presented in social media when it comes to black men and black women. Reason why I say this is because you will hear people say, and I hear this a lot with women, that when they start to consider to date outside their race, they just say date outside their race. But when they're talking about dating within their race, they'll say they won't date down. I'm not going to date down. I'm thinking about dating white. We all know the terms that's out there, the pasta and lobster and all that other stuff. But nevertheless, I'm thinking about dating white, exploring outside of my race. But whenever you hear about that exploration, you never hear about the actual standard. It's as if once you're outside the race, then you're suitable, you're good enough. That's it. All you need to be is just be that. Because the same voice that's articulating that we're not dating down within the race, I'm not going to date down and date a black man that's at this level, whatever level that they're pointing out. I'm not going to date down to him, but I will date outside. And when you look at things with critical thinking, there lies the problem. Because this particular point of view is not whether you're dating outside your race or within your race. It's what you were projecting as a standard within your own is not really a standard. It's a hindrance. You're hindering people from getting involved in relationships with you, particularly black men, because the metric system that you're using with a black man, you're not using it with any man and every man. When if that was really and truly your standard, then that would be the case for everyone. So this is the reason why I'm saying there's not really much of a standard that's being presented. There's even nonsense now that's being spoken about that a woman, it'll be best, and this isn't necessarily towards black women, but a good thing for a wife to be is to be mean. That's dumb. If you're familiar with what it is that God said about mean people, you would never, ever encourage someone to be mean, especially not in their relationship. See, but there lies this concept that a black man and a black woman deserve the worst, starting within themselves, starting from each other. And this is in presentation. This is not a relationship that has gone bad. This is people getting out before the masses and saying, yeah, be mean. Be mean to your husband. If you're in a relationship and you're mean to that person, what happens when that person defends himself? What happens when that person says, well, I'm going to be mean to you? Then what? You see, so you're just creating this sewer. You're creating a sewer system when your water should be pure. We're no longer seeing the bad man anymore being identified. What keeps being pumped out here is that be just as bad as the men are. Then both are bad and nobody wins. And you never had an issue with somebody's bad. You never had an issue with the wrongdoings of someone else. You just haven't perfected it yet. So now that you've perfected it, now you're going to tell the world, hey, we could do bad just like they were doing bad. So then what's your argument? You don't have a standard. One of the ways of how you can point out a guy who's an adulterer. An adulterer is a man who sleeps with women who are in relationships with other men. That's an adulterer. So this woman is married, but this guy sleeps with her. You know how you can point out one like from a mile away? If he's telling women, while they're in a relationship, mind you, that there's a competition for them. A woman in a relationship is not in competition. There's no competitive fight for a woman in a relationship. Because if that woman is in a relationship with a man and there's some competition for who can get that woman, then that woman is not in a relationship with a man. And you know what type of woman is not in a relationship with one man, but she's out there to the highest bidder to any man? Whoever can cover the cost? Again, but this is the nonsense that's being pushed out. And this is coming from black people, melanated people, the people who speak so highly of themselves, but this is what we're telling each other. And I'm not even going to say we, because I don't say that. And nobody on this side subscribes to that nonsense. We would never be caught saying stuff like that. If you're the best, you deserve the best, and you have to be the best. That's what you have to be. You have to be the best. And this B knows that. Notice when I said be the best, the B showed up. Because when you're the best, you have to be the best. And you have to require the best. Marriage is about how you would love someone else. That's why so many marriages fail, because people don't want to deal with that reality. That's why you told everybody who you invited how much you were going to love your husband. You did not say that this is what I require from my husband, and he must do this, and he must do that, and he must do this, and he must do that. And the minute he leaves off from doing any one of those things for whatever reason, then, hey, it's a competitive market out here. So a guy who thinks he's Yoda or Baby Yoda, who's going to go around telling women that, he's only setting them up for a demise. Because what is God going to require from a husband? To see how well he loved his wife. What is God going to require from a wife? To see how well she loved her husband. That's why you can't tell a woman that it's okay for her just to be there. No, that's nonsense. Because be there for what? She has to do something. There's 24 hours in a day. What is she marrying somebody for if it's not to actually marry them? She has to be engaged in some form of activity, some form of contribution, some form of input. She has to have some form of standard. She has a place. She has a voice. What is her voice for? What is her ideas for? And this is how we see the diminishing of a woman's actual value. It's being pumped out here from both men and women. It's being pumped out here that the women don't need to do anything. Just basically go to the highest bidder. And there's a group of women who follow that. They support that. They're in favor of that. All of the talk about doing the bare minimum and men doing the bare minimum, you see what it is that they prefer. They prefer to do the bare minimum themselves, which means just show up. That's never going to lead to a healthy relationship. Because if you're a woman and let's say you found a vulnerable man and he's wearing diapers now, he's wearing adult diapers, and he's just looking for someone to just spend the rest of his days with, you're going to have a serious fight from his family when that man passes away. If you think you're going to violate the sanctity of marriage just to, go up a few scales, you're not. You can follow the playbook of Anna Nicole Smith, but what happened to Anna Nicole Smith? What was the end of the story? So she played with the wrinkly man for a little while, and then what happened? See? You can't play around like this. Nobody can. But it's being pumped out there for women to do it because women are inclined to hear something. And people who are vultures and who are wolves, they need you vulnerable. They need you at a vulnerable state. They need you when you're down and out. So if something is not going right in your relationship, which that can happen at any given moment. You can have an argument with your spouse right now. If something is not going right in your relationship, this person needs to work on that, needs to exploit that. It's like a weed. So it's not really about your prosperity. It's about theirs. But in order for them to be successful, they need you to be alive. But they need you to be damaged, to be weakened somewhat. That's why they're always going to speak to you as if you're coming from that place. They have to project that. Tapeworm, whatever it is you can think of. These are living things that cannot sustain their livelihood on their own. They need to sustain their livelihood leeching onto something else. But the way that they could survive on you is not if you're strong. So I have to constantly tell you to be actually weak, but make you feel strong. That's what I need to present to you, that you are strong, you are mighty, you are this, but only because I'm here with you. Right? So if you need me in order to feel the way of how you feel about yourself, then you're dependent on that person. But that's not natural in life to be dependent on another person in that way, especially not for an adult, because typically you'll get a set of life skills and you'll move on. You can always tell the characteristics and the intentions, because intentions always manifest themselves over time. You can always tell the intentions of an individual by the crowd of what they draw. If everybody's a divorcee or has had time in the family court system, and if your target audience is those people, what do all of those individuals have? Typically, they'll have a chip on their shoulder. They'll be jaded. They'll have a void, right? These people went through some stuff. Like, this is no joke to go through these things. So your point is not on how to help them navigate so maybe their next move will be their best move. Your point is how to find them in that misery and continuously massage that sore spot and get them to focus on things of the past, but not of their future. That's why it blows my mind every time I see people who constantly talk about their ex. They constantly talk about their ex. You have no future. You don't even have a presence. You don't even have any form of recollection of the past that you have taken and said, you know what? Tomorrow I'll do this and I won't do that. You have no identity and you're powerless. So there's going to be those vultures out there, those decomposers that's going to find you dying because you're out here. You're on the internet. You're on social media. And you're very vulnerable. So they know how to get to you. That man didn't do what? You telling me that man didn't do what? Don't you know what you deserve, girl? Don't you know what you deserve and how you deserve? That man, you know how many women deserve what it is that man is saying you deserve? And how many women you think that man came across? 1 million? So if they deserve it and they're deserving, then why are you not providing it? How you found me and I found you. By the time we cross paths, you're supposed to be unavailable for me. But what you can do is you can give me some pointers, put me on the game. Hear me out, hear my story, and be reasonable with me. Hold me accountable for what it is that I did wrong, and tell me what it is that I did right in your estimation from the information of what you've gathered so far. And let's come up with an action plan on how to have a better future. You don't hear that. You constantly hear that there is a problem and how to identify the problem. How are you going to get forward if you're constantly looking back? So if everybody who surrounds you is weak and fragile, what does that tell you that that individual is? Everybody's fractured. No strength, no confidence. Some people will tell you that they're a survivor. They're a survivor. Survivors don't tell you every single day that they survived something. That's a part of their story. That's not their actual story, because their story has chapters. People survive a car crash. They don't shake your hand and tell you, I survived a car crash. People survive battles with cancer. They don't meet you today at the grocery store and say, yeah, I had cancer 2 years ago. That's not what they do. You get to learn them. They trust you. Y'all develop this bond. And then they share certain details about their life. And that's so you can understand this person's character. They don't walk up to you saying, yeah, I suffered this trauma for 7 years of my life. I was kidnapped. I was wrongfully in prison. That's not how people introduce themselves to one another. That's socially awkward. So why in social media would you do that? That's all you're presenting to the people, is that you have that? See, there's a market for that. There's not a market for good health. There's a market for poor health. People advertise poor health. People are advertising what's not good. And they're selling it, and people are buying it. So you can identify a guy who's out there who's going to look to disrupt your relationship. He's a home wrecker. That's why he's going to tell you, if your man don't do something right, if you want your man to do 8 things, and out of the 8 things, if he doesn't do 1 thing right, you single. That man don't own you. Remember, what's his name? Robin Thicke. Remember he was singing, that man is not your makeup, right? Remember he was singing that song with T.I. and Pharrell? Yeah, that man is not your maker. But that form of advice, how did that end up for Robin Thicke? And no shots towards Robin Thicke at all. I mean, it's just a song. So you get what I'm saying? These people are going to help you destroy yourself, and they're going to be exalted. They're going to have a kingdom of broken minions. That's never rulership if you're talking about a kingdom. A powerful kingdom, when you see the people of the kingdom, you see might, you see strength, you see dignity. It's times of the past when you had royalty come across people of the kingdom, the subjects of the kingdom, and thought they were the royal ones. That's standard. So, Cast the Crowns Inc., that's our message. Salute to you guys.